Yeah, my screen on.
Lorraine, I'm just going to get her on now.
So do you need that especially for that computer or do you find
Lorraine Beck's just going to get her on it now.
Okay.
Magnetic, so now just
Thank you.
it does? No, it doesn't. But anyway, that's all you need is like that, isn't it?
yeah. I just
Can you see that?
I can't see a thing.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, go test it.
I can see it as clear as day.
Testing the privacy screen.
Yeah, I can see it as clear as day.
What do you mean? No. It's okay.
It's from the side.
It's an angle. So you can see everything in here. But if you stand over here, keep walking.
Right, okay.
I thought it was glaring from the eye.
I use it. I always use it when I'm in court because in New South Wales since COVID, we had the jury behind us, and so
They see you
I
on
want the
Instagram.
jury seeing all the documents on my screen, messaging barrister, being like, "We're fucked. Gun you down."
My screen.
They can't hear us. It's fine.
Okay.
Maybe they can. Yeah. Oh, that's so exciting.
Thursday night. Because on the weekend I'll talk
Reporters now in session. Please be seated.
Morning, Your Honour. I apologise for the delayed start. The first witness this morning is Nurse Lorraine Walcott, and I call Miss Walcott.
Thank you. Ms Walcott, thank you for making yourself available to give evidence today. Before you tell your story or give any evidence to the court, do you promise to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes, Dr. Dwyer. Miss Walcott, could you please tell the court your full name?
My name is Lorraine Walcott.
And where...
Lorraine Walcott, sorry. His middle name, yeah.
I'm sorry, I spoke over the top of you just when you said that.
Yeah, Lorraine Ann Walcott.
Thank you. And which state are you currently located in to give us evidence today?
New South Wales.
What's your current employment position?
A remote area nurse. I work for a peak recruitment agency, which is Aspen Medical, but I've been contracted 3 times this year to Pine Creek Clinic. I also work as a casual registered nurse for New South Wales Health and help out at delegate MPS, which is mainly aged care clients.
And Ms Walcott, are you about to head up to Pine Creek again to work there for a period of time?
Next week, yeah, for another 2 months, and then back next year for another 6.
Ms Walcott, you're giving evidence today because on the 9th of November 2019, you were one of 2 nurses based in Yullamu who attended Yundamu after Kumanjayi had been shot. I want to start by just asking you about the circumstances of an interview that you gave. We have in our brief of evidence an interview with you, or the transcript of it, dated the 10th of November 2019. And we've got the recording too. It's at 9-14. That's an account that you gave of your involvement in attending Yundamu on the 9th of November, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And have you read that transcript?
Several times,
Okay.
yes.
At the time that you were interviewed, it was 12:16 p.m. on the 10th. It occurs to me that you'd been involved in some very traumatic events the night before. How were you feeling when you were interviewed?
My colleague and I were both sleep deprived because as we'd been awake all day Saturday night, and now it was midday Sunday. I feel I had some some sort of a head injury. My colleague commented that she thought I might have had some concussion. We were still in shock and a bit of disbelief about the night's events.
So what I'm going to do today then is just take you through those events. I hope that I won't re-traumatise you. I know it involves reliving some events that you've thought deeply about over the last 3 years. Before I do that, can I just ask you about your career in nursing? In November 2019, you were, I think, 61 years of age.
That's correct.
When did you commence your career in nursing?
I first commenced my career in nursing at the age of 17.
And
I was a hospital trained nurse.
in which state?
That was in Sydney, New South Wales.
And what other state have you remained in nursing, Miss Walcott, the whole of your career?
Yes, I have. Yes.
And have you specialised in a particular area?
I probably describe myself as a Jill of all trades as far as nursing goes. I completed my training and went to London for 2 to 3 years to complete a midwifery course. I was a midwife. I also completed my Bachelor of Nursing, specialised in dialysis for quite a few years, probably 15 years. And that took me to the Middle East, where I lived and worked for about 10 years and returned home at the end of 2012.
And after you returned home in 2012, what states and territories have you worked in?
I briefly worked for New South Wales Health in a small dialysis unit. I felt a bit of a reverse culture shock, to tell the truth, because I'd been in the Middle East, wasn't settling too well in the New South Wales Health hospital system. I wanted to do remote. I'd expressed a desire to go working even at dialysis remote, and that's what I did. I went to Tennant Creek Hospital first in 2013, moved over to Mackay, then Kalgoorlie, then commenced working with Purple House Dialysis, which is based in Alice Springs. I was working with them for about 12 months, and that introduced me to some of the more remote communities, working with Purple House, and then I transitioned over to do remote area nursing from about mid-2015. So 7-8 years, I think.
Before November 2019, what work had you done in remote central Australian communities?
Remote central I hadn't worked in, but I had tracks before and after Christmas earlier that year in the Kimberleys. The communities were called Luma, Kalumbaroo and Warman, which was also called Chesty Creek. Prior to that, I had worked 3 years full-time with the Numinjara Health Service, which is also based in Alice Springs, but the communities are in WA. From Kirakara down to Warburton, I worked at Warrapoona, Blackstone, and spent the last 18 months in Warburton as a RAN and towards the end as the acting manager.
Did you enjoy your time there, Miss Walker?
Yes, I did enjoy it. I get some job satisfaction from working remote, from things that might seem little, but if you look at the patient holistically and tend to their healthcare, something else might pop up that you could attend to. It could be dental, mental health. We do a lot of adult health checks, kids health checks, sexual health, vaccinating. It's good because it's unpredictable and there's lots to do. The clinics can be very busy.
Before November 2019, had you ever been to Yuendumu?
Only as a dialysis nurse for 3 weeks, and I didn't I wasn't familiar with the Yundamu clinic, only the dialysis clinic.
Had you been to the dialysis clinic that's run by Purple House in Yundamu?
Yes, I worked there for about 3 weeks in 2015 before I commenced work as a remote area nurse.
When did you start work as a remote area nurse or an agency nurse at Yulamu?
I commenced about the 16th of September 2019. We had some orientation in town first, as I had worked for Central Health Service, which included becoming familiar with the virtual medical health system called Inquest. We did cultural awareness training, work health, and safety, learnt how to use the striker stretchers, infection control, all those mandatory things that you have to do to be orientated to a health service and the communities.
How long did that orientation take in Alice Springs?
I believe we were in town for about 4 days, and then I was taken out with the service driver to Yulamu around the 19th of September.
What did the cultural awareness training involve in Alice Springs?
It's basically much the same for all services. It doesn't matter where you work, you always have a mandatory cultural awareness module to attend. It includes cultural awareness of different cultures and to be accepting of them, cultural safety, different things like how people react when they've got sorry business, different words that you use. You have to be careful about the way you speak. Sometimes you pick up the local lingo, and I think they respect you for trying to communicate with them with those words and that language.
When you went to Yulamu, was there another orientation related to that community and that clinic?
Yes, there was. By the manager at the time, you get orientated to the layout of the clinic, the emergency equipment. There's usually some codes or access codes you need to get into places like the pharmacy. There's other access codes to get into dangerous drug cupboards. You get an orientation to the community. Someone will usually drive you around, an Aboriginal health worker, to familiarise you with the layout of the community. You do a lot of house calls, so it's important to know, well, we did there, where people live. Elderly people sometimes can't get themselves to the clinic, so you go out to pick them up. Visiting specialists, cardiology, child health, midwifery, whatever, you help coordinate those visits by making sure those patients have access to the clinic.
Ms Walcott, how many Aboriginal, I withdraw that, I'll just ask you a question about staff overall in Yulamu. Do you recall now how many staff there were at the clinic?
Just myself, as in nursing, there was myself and the manager. There was an Aboriginal health worker. He wasn't there much. I believe he might have been at Sorry Business or some sort of cultural lead. There was another Aboriginal health receptionist who used to help coordinate the running of the clinic.
By the manager, was that Heather Zanker?
No, that was Sylvia Dean.
Okay. What was the role of Heather Zanker in November 2019?
Heather came, when I arrived, Sylvia was making plans to head back up to the top end to work at Daly River, I believe. She informed me that I'd be taking over her job in 3 weeks.
I see.
And that puts you more in an admin role. So you're seeing patients and doing more admin than when you're just seeing patients in the clinic. So other nurses came to assist. One did come from, I think, over the course of those last 3 weeks, there was a nurse every week. The last nurse was Heather. She commenced work with us on the Monday 4th of November.
So you were the senior nurse in November, for the month of November, you were the senior nurse there?
That's correct.
And did you come to know that Heather Zanker had worked previously in Yundamu?
She said she'd worked at a lot of NT central communities. I think it probably came up in a course of conversation that she'd worked there, but she also hadn't been there for a while, apparently, before the incident.
In terms of the community, Miss Walker, can you recall what the population was when you were there in November 2019?
It's hard to remember. I believe it was a lot smaller than Yundamu, probably 150 to 200.
Okay. And what were the clinic hours?
The clinic hours were about 8 o'clock to 5 p.m.
Was that Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, and then we had an after-hours on-call service. So we were on call. One person would be the first on call from 5 o'clock till 8 the next morning, but we were both on call 24/7 really, because we had to go out together. One person was holding the on-call phone, so she received the phone calls and then would triage whatever it was on the phone, and then if you needed to go out, you would go ring next door or pop next door to tell Heather we had a call out.
Was it the same on the weekend?
Yeah, same, yeah.
Okay. And Miss Walcott, was it off, in your experience from September through to November, did you often get a call overnight or on the weekend?
Yes, we did. We got call-outs at the clinic. We have to attend anyone that rings with a sick child. We have to attend chest pains, burns, the more serious things. Sometimes we would get calls for not so important things like they got out of Panadol, they had pain, had a headache, but you tried to triage if it was that important that you had to go out. We would meet them. Sometimes they would ring from the clinic. They would ring a bell at the clinic, which would go through to the on-call phone. So yes, we got call-outs, yeah.
In terms of those call-outs that were more urgent, like chest pains or burns or a sick child, are you able to say on average of an evening, would you, let's say take a week, would you tend to get at least one call-out during the week, or is that an underestimate?
I think it's an underestimation because it's unpredictable, but I would average probably a minimum of 3 to 5.
Per week?
Yeah, we did have some elderly people with chronic diseases. So if there was a breathing problem, you had to bring them straight into the clinic and see to that. Yeah.
On the 9th of November, or I withdraw that, at any time prior to the 9th of November, had you been asked to be on call for another community?
The weekend before, they had no staff at Imumpa, and it was requested that I go to Yundamu to collect a staff member who was finishing her contract, drive her into Alice Springs, leave the Yulamu keys with Yundamu, give a quick handover, and then I proceeded into Alice Springs, collected an Aboriginal health nurse, and we both went down to Amumpa for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and returned to the clinic Monday morning, which was basically an all-day drive.
Did that leave anybody covering Yulamu?
Yundamu was covering that weekend. That's why I had to take the keys for Yulamu Clinic to Yundamu, and I believe the phone was transferred over. The on-call phone was transferred, the number to whoever was on call in Yundamu.
And can you tell us roughly what the population was of Imumpa at that time?
There was a lot of people not there. They were concerned that there was some sorrow in the community. There'd been a child had passed away. Sometimes there's a little bit of unrest amongst families. They just wanted someone to be there. There was hardly anyone there. I don't know whether they'd gone to where the sorry business was, but there was also some mention of maybe some unrest in Yulara to do with, I think it was to do with the statement, not sure.
I'll come then to the 9th of November. On that day, it was a Saturday, you were the main on-call nurse for Yulamu, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And Heather Zanker was there in the community with you, of course.
Yeah, she lived in the house next door to where I was, so not far away.
You indicate in the interview with police that you received a phone call from Helen Gill.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sometime on Saturday, informing us, these are your words in the interview, informing us that due to some break-ins and damaged cars, the Yundamu clinic staff would be evacuating. Firstly, do you recall roughly what time you received that call?
I think it was around midday.
And did you know who Helen Gill was before you got the call?
No, I didn't.
Did she explain what her position was?
She probably said, I think she probably said that she was the after hours manager for the weekend.
When she was speaking with you, it was clear that a decision had already been made that the Yundamu clinic staff would be evacuating?
Yes, it had.
Did she say anything else about the reasons why?
There was also some mention of, due to the unrest in Yundamu, there was going to be a funeral on. I'm not sure of the details why, but she said they weren't sure if there was going to be some unrest in connection to the funeral amongst families. I'm not sure.
Okay. So, and I'll just read to you what you say in your statement, because it may remind you of that conversation. At page 2, you note, she said that there was going to be a funeral, there was a body in the morgue, and they weren't sure if there were going to be any unrest after that, but we were to cover, myself and Heather, my colleague, were to cover Yundamu community. We worked in Yulamu, there were 2 nurse posts, 2 of us were on call 24/7, and we were informed we had to cover Yundamu. Did you say anything? Well, firstly, what did you think of that request?
I thought it was a bit steep, to tell the truth, given the difference in the size of the communities, but I'd been contracted to work in Yulamu, although I had been to a month on the weekend before, and there's a difference in the amount of staff that covered Yundamu with a population of 800 plus, I think, and us. We were a bit concerned about leaving Yulamu unattended. She did talk as if it had already been decided and that they were being evacuated. I mentioned that, I think I said, want all of them? And she said yes, and I said, well, could anyone come to support us? She said, is there any accommodation? I said, there's 2 empty houses. And her next words were something like, I'll see what I can do. Believe me, Lorraine, if I could help, I would.
And can I just break down some of that? This might seem like an obvious question, but when you say we're a bit concerned about leaving Yulamu, what were your concerns?
At that time, we're working in Yulamu. If anyone needed us, we wouldn't be there. That's the bottom line of it. It was our community. We were contracted to work there, like I said, 24/7 on call. And the fact that there was 2 of us and there'd been a lot more Yundamu staff, and how would we logistically be able to cover a community with a population of that size when there was 2 of us in Yulamu.
And given your knowledge of the community of Yulamu, where you have a number of elderly people with chronic illnesses and you had an experience of sick children previously, it was entirely plausible, wasn't it, that you might have an emergency in Yulamu while you were called away in Yundamu?
That's correct.
when you were having that first phone call with Miss Gill, she said, "Let me see. I'll see what I can do in terms of additional staff." Did you speak with her again that day?
I didn't speak to Helen because I went next door to advise Heather about the arrangements, and she commented that she didn't think that sounded right, that she would ring Helen, who she addressed as Gilly. She said, "I know it's I'll give her a call." She rang, got another person on the phone who said she thought that didn't sound right either. I didn't talk to Heather again that day.
Do you?
Heather did, yeah.
All right. And we've got some information from Heather in the brief of evidence, but what was relayed to you by Heather as to whether or not anybody else would come?
No, we weren't getting any more support staff. I didn't realise till later in the day that the on-call phone, much later in the day, had been switched over. So we thought that all the calls would be fielded to us from New Zealand. So it was a bit daunting because it is a busy, we heard it's a busy community.
In fact, what happened with the phone?
The fact, well, we just thought we would be fielding all the calls from Yuendamu, from
Yes.
anybody who needed us. Yeah. And like I said, I didn't realise that we wouldn't have had to accept all those calls because they were possibly going through the on-call phone with the manager.
In Alice Springs?
Who'd been evacuated, yeah.
You note in your interview, Miss Walcott, that you had a conversation with Sergeant Julie Frost on that day, correct?
Yes,
And
I did.
Did you contact her or she contact you?
After these phone calls were going backwards and forwards, there was a call from Julie to say she asked me what I'd heard, and I said that you would be accompanying us to any call-outs in Yuendamu, if need be.
And Sergeant Frost said to you that wouldn't be happening because the police were understaffed.
They were understaffed. I don't know what their staffing levels are like, but she mentioned they were understaffed. And I had heard them in the Yuendamu community that morning at 3 o'clock. There was sounded like a domestic incident, and it was quite loud. And you wake up when you hear things like that because you're wondering if you're going to get a call to the clinic. And I heard the police vehicle, the horn of the police vehicle. She confirmed in the phone call later that day that they had been in Yuendamu. So I assumed that they were quite fatigued as well.
I'm sorry, Miss Walcott, we just missed what you
assumed they were quite fatigued as well.
Fatigued,
yeah.
Thank you. So in your interview you say, so we informed our manager in town about that, and it seemed we wouldn't be able to come down at all because we wouldn't have anyone to accompany us. So was it...
I think Heather might have made that phone call back because I don't remember ringing the office again after that.
When you were at Yuendamu, you did not have police stationed permanently at Yuendamu with you, is that right?
No, they would have to come from Yuendamu if need be.
All right. But you would, if you got a phone call in the middle of the night saying somebody was having an asthma attack or chest pains, you would go directly to the house, would you, without a police escort?
In Yuendamu we would, yeah.
Okay. What was your view as to whether or not you could do that in Yuendamu if you got a call out?
It could have been. It could have been just for emergencies that we would be called in Yuendamu.
Well, I'll ask you this question, Miss Walcott. By the afternoon of the 9th of November, what was your belief as to, this is after the keys had been dropped off to you for the clinic, did you think that you were covering the whole of Yuendamu or just emergencies?
We did think we were covering any calls that we received from Yuendamu, yeah.
So I just want to take you to that point. In the afternoon, I think you spoke with Cassie, is that right? Cassandra Holland?
That's correct.
Did you speak with her by telephone first?
She rang to say that I had heard from Helen that they would be bringing the Yuendamu Clinic keys. She rang, I don't know, I think she had arrived in Yuendamu and said that, Cassie, I've got the keys. I said, could you bring them around to the house? She said, I don't know where you are. So I went to get Heather and then we drove around to receive the keys from Cassie.
Do you recall having a conversation with Cassie when you got the keys?
We did. It wasn't very long, but she brought the keys and I actually said, I don't know why you're giving me the keys to the clinic because I have never worked there. You need to be orientated to a clinic when you're going to work there. Nobody's shown you security codes or where emergency resuscitation equipment is. It would be very hard if you were there in an emergency, given that you know how to get into the clinic with the different white cards, keys, whatever that you need to use to get in.
Did you say anything else to her at that point?
No, I didn't.
Can I just understand when
she
you say?
did answer. Sorry, she did answer. When I said that, she just said exactly. But I don't know what that was. What was that in reference to?
Sounds like she agreed with you. When you get keys for a clinic, are they a big bundle of keys with swipe cards and things like
Yes.
that, or it's not
Yes,
just a
they
single
are.
key to the front door?
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't matter where you go. It takes you quite a while to work out, even in your accommodation, which one's for the security door, which is the main door. The same in the clinic. There's a lot more. You do get used to it, but you can't do it like quickly when you first go to a clinic.
So when Miss Holland left you on that day and you had the keys, was it your intention that if you got a call out to Yuendamu, you wouldn't bother taking the clinic keys?
No, that wasn't our intention.
Okay.
We would. That was a statement in reference to the fact that I hadn't worked there before. But if we had to, we would have gone and tried to get in.
Okay. So I'll come now then to the phone call that you received from Sergeant Frost. That was at around 7:30 p.m. and she said words to the effect of, have you got the ability to get here quickly? There's been a shooting. Come as quick as you can and come to the back of the police station.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, had you had any call-outs for Yuendamu that night or day?
No, we hadn't. So, as I said, I didn't realise. I thought we were receiving all the calls, and then I came to find out later on that the on-call phone was with the nurse manager in Alice Springs. So we were expecting calls, but we didn't get any. I did get a call from Dr. Amy, who had come from Alice Springs and was concerned that she had valuables in her accommodation, and she asked if she could pick the keys up and then go back to Yuendamu to try and get into her accommodation or into the clinic, I think.
Was Dr. Amy in Alice Springs when you got that phone call?
She may have arrived back out at Yuendamu when she made that call.
So
She asked where the keys were, and I said I just received them from Cassie.
I see. So did you know Dr. Amy?
No.
And she called you on the clinic phone, is that right?
That's correct.
So where did she tell you where she physically was at that time?
I seem to remember saying that she'd driven out from Alice Springs. I don't know if she realised there was no way to get into the clinic to get her house keys. But I also don't know what made her ring the Yuendamu phone.
Did you have more than one phone call with Dr. Amy at any time?
Only a call to say that asked if she could pick the keys up, and then she delivered them back to us around 6 o'clock in the evening.
I see. So she drove from Yundamu out to Yulamu, is that right?
She did.
What time did she arrive in Yulamu?
I can't be sure, sorry. I just remember it was after we got the keys from Cassie. Could have been 3:30 or 4, and delivered them back about 6. She stated that she couldn't get into Luana's office, where apparently the accommodation fee was kept.
She stated that she could not get into Luana's office. Sorry, Lorraine, could you say that again?
She was hoping, I don't know where the keys are kept there, but she was hoping that she could just retrieve her house keys and then go to her house to collect her valuables. But she possibly got into the clinic, and then the manager's office blocked. She did not have a key for that.
So she told you that on the phone or when she dropped the keys off?
When she brought the keys back, yes.
So had she been able to retrieve what she wanted?
No.
Where did she go after dropping the keys off? Do you know?
Back into Alice Springs.
It doesn't sound like it was very well planned or organised, the exchange of keys and collections and returns. Would you agree?
I agree.
I think that Dr. Amy said that you, in fact, or someone maybe met her halfway. Did you?
Yeah. I didn't want to leave. Again, I didn't want to leave Yulamu. And the only other option was if we met on the back road.
And that's the shortcut, is it, between Yulamu and Yundamu?
Yes, it is.
Did you make any inquiry with Dr. Amy as to whether or not she could stay in community, given your difficulties in covering the whole of Yundamu from Yulamu?
No, I didn't believe it was an option. She was. I got the feeling she was heading back into Alice Springs, but the main objective for her was to get a vote, take her valuables, and she was, I guess, part of the health staff that were withdrawn.
Ms. Walcott, given your concerns, did you feel that there was anyone in NT Health that you could escalate your concerns with?
No, not really, because I had faith in the people, the managers that we were dealing with at the time.
If you had a similar scenario again, where you're covering one remote community and you're asked to cover a much larger community at short notice, do you feel that you would be more vocal in expressing your concerns?
Yes, I would.
So you received that phone call from, right, withdraw that just before I go on from that. Was your colleague Heather Zanker expressing the same concerns as you were?
She was.
Was she frustrated that she could not get more assistance from management in terms of getting extra resourcing, at least to Yulamu?
I'd say that we both had the same feeling about the call for us to go.
I take it from your evidence that you just felt that you personally had no power or ability to press further for something different to happen. Is that right?
No, I think I was just going to go along with the plan, but of course we never expected the events of that night to ever happen. I mean, you deal with a lot of different things when you're called out. You deal with them as best you can, but no one would have expected that to happen.
Absolutely.
That wasn't in our mind. We were nervous about the volume of call outs and whether we'd be able to cope with both communities if we had been called out.
Her Honour will have to give consideration to any risk assessment that was done that night. On the one hand, there may have been risk to the nurses in Yuendumu that they've told us about. On the other hand, there was significant risk to the communities of both Yuendumu and Yuendumu, weren't there? Given that there might not be nursing staff to meet emergency needs.
Yes.
Did you think at the time that you would be placed in at some risk because you were covering both communities and you might not get to somebody?
It was on our minds that could possibly happen. Yes, it was like trying to cope with knowing full well there's a large quota of staff in Yuendumu and it's typically a busy community. It just felt like it might have been a bit too much of a workload for Heather and I to cope with both.
There were, I think you mentioned to Helen Gill on the phone, there were 2 houses which were free and unoccupied in Yuendumu.
Health houses. There was 2 vacant houses.
Do you recall being told that more staff would be able to assist the next day?
No.
So if I may return to the 7:30 p.m. call from Julie Frost, it must have been a shock to hear from her that there had been a shooting in the community.
Yes, it was, and I could also hear it in Julie's voice.
Did you? How did she sound to you?
She sounded quite stressed, and like she had just received some sort of shock.
Did she tell you anything about who had done the shooting?
No, we had no details. Only there was a request to get there as quickly as we could. There had been a shooting, so we had no other details.
I take it that was a short phone call with Sergeant Frost?
It was fairly short, and she mentioned about bringing emergency equipment and to ring AirMed or RFDS, I assume she meant. Then she said, "Oh no, don't worry about that. I'll ask Luana." And then I think that's when I found out that Luana had the Yuendumu clinic on-call phone.
Miss Walcott, what did you do after you hung up the phone from Sergeant Frost?
My immediate action was to call Heather and to get out as quick as we could. But I had another phone call. There was a few phone calls, and it was from Julie's partner, a colleague, relaying the same information. And he hadn't realised they were talking then in the background. He hadn't realised that Julie had already rang.
Was that Chris Hand?
Yeah, I can't remember for sure, sorry.
How long did that conversation take?
That was quite brief as well, once he realised that we'd already been informed by Julie.
What else did you do before you left the community of Yuendumu?
I was still trying to ring Heather after that call, and then I had another call from a mother with a sick child who wanted us to go to the clinic. I tried to triage on the phone and said, if it's okay, we're going to an emergency in Yuendumu, and could it wait until we got back? And she said, no, you have to come and see him now, which we had to do. And then I think I'd already informed Heather, we were in the ambulance pretty quickly to go round to the clinic. We made a plan to that she would see the sick child to save time, and that I would retrieve the emergency equipment from the ED where it's kept. That includes quite hefty emergency bags, airway bags, and the defibrillator.
So from the time...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, please go on.
No, yeah, you said what happened. We just got that as quickly as we could into the ambulance. Heather assessed the child, treated the child, and then we were in the ambulance. And I was going to go on the back road, and Heather commented that because it was dark, it would be too dangerous, that we should go the other way where the roads were better. The back road, you've understand, it's dark. That was our risk assessment as far as our trip. And there's wildlife, wild cattle, everything on those roads. So it would have been quite slow anyway. We drove as fast as we could, put on the better road out of Yullamu to the Tanai Highway, where I was able to go a bit faster in the ambulance.
Do you drive lights and sirens? Of an ambulance, or you don't at that time? You don't need to?
No, we didn't, but there wasn't really, I don't believe there was much traffic on the road either. Once we got onto the bitumen and went faster, there was, I don't recall much other traffic.
So, Ms. Walcott, are you able to estimate how long it took you from the time you received Julie Frost's call at 7:30 p.m. to the time you left the community?
I'm estimating that it would have been about 7:45 or 7:50 after we assessed the child in the clinic, retrieved the equipment and set off.
So about 20 minutes?
Yes. If we'd had the equipment in the ambulance, it's not kept in the ambulance due to the heat and occasionally vehicles get broken into. Also, that equipment is needed in the emergency department. We would have, if it had been in the ambulance, of course, we would have set off 5-10 minutes earlier.
What time did you arrive in the community of Yullamu?
I believe it was about 8 minutes past 9, as there was a sat nav thing on the dashboard on the windscreen. I believe it was 21:08.
And where did you go when you arrived?
We went, Heather was directing me into the community to where the police station was, but prior to that, our last phone communication had been with Emma from St John's Ambulance, as we were about to lose signal on the on-call phone. And she mentioned something about she couldn't confirm if it was safe, but proceed if we thought it was safe for us. So we proceeded. As we approached the community, Heather and I discussed that if there'd been any restlessness, we didn't know what we were going into, but the fact that someone had mentioned that it might be not safe, we just discussed that if it seemed unsafe, that we would turn around and basically go back to Yullamu.
Ms. Walcott, given that you'd had this news that there'd been a shooting and that was extremely surprising and was a shock, and you didn't know what you were going into, how were you feeling as you drove in?
Quite, nervous, anxious, but a bit of adrenaline on board, and hoping that we could cope with whatever situation we were going into.
Just before we go to what occurred in Yullamu, there is a vehicle report for an ambulance, which I think must be the ambulance that you were driving. It says that the ambulance was turned on at 7:40 p.m. at 23 Arunga Crescent. Is that your house or?
I don't know that I don't know the streets or something.
Oh, right.
Often don't have street names, but if that's correct, that would have been when we started the ambulance to go around to the clinic then.
Yeah, so you keep the ambulance at your house and then you use the ambulance to drive to the clinic?
We do. Whoever's
Right.
first on call has the ambulance at their front door and carries the on-call. Yeah.
So it says that the ambulance was turned on at 7:40 p.m. At an address in Yullamu, and then it was turned off at 7:43 p.m. at another address, which I'm assuming is the clinic.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And then it's turned on again at 7:53 p.m. So it shows that there was about 10 minutes there when you were packing the ambulance.
Yeah, and while Heather was assessing the sick child. Yeah.
And then it's turned off again at 9:16 p.m, which is at the Yuendamu police station, which I think must be at the gate where you waited.
I'd say that was when we were eventually the big door opened of the compound and we drove in. I'd say that was when I'd actually parked inside and switched it off.
In the actual record, it says it was turned off at 9:16 p.m. It was turned on again at 9:20 p.m. and then turned off at 9:21 p.m. So I was reading that as 9:16 p.m. I know it's a little bit different from your timing on the GPS, but 9:16 p.m. according to this, probably at the back gate at the police station, 9:20 p.m. when you're let into the police station, and 9:21 p.m. But I also know that you did reverse it and change the position, but in any event, probably out of the vehicle and ready to attend at 9:21 p.m.
We didn't switch the vehicle off
Okay.
at all until we were inside the compound. We pulled up briefly outside the police station when the Indigenous policeman spoke to us, and then we were waiting around at the compound gate to be let in, but the door, that's what was confusing because I don't know how they were meant to know we were there, but I was assuming they would have had some sort of CCTV camera and no one appeared to be letting us in, and then I switched on the ambulance lights.
So probably 9:16 is when you went into the police compound, and
Yes.
maybe that 9:20 and 9:21 on off was when you went back to reverse the vehicle so that you were facing outwards.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go on.
Ms. Sanko, in your interview, you explain that when you drove up to the Yuendamu police station, you say, this is at page 18, yeah, well, we arrived, they were just standing, there was quite a few people, probably seeing this ambulance arrive, I don't know, and thinking help's on the way. Then the man came up, the Indigenous man, because we sort of pulled up at the front, and he said, it's all right. He opened Heather's door and said, it's all right, I'm a copper. When you first arrived at the police station and you saw a number of community members around, did they appear to you to be quite calm?
Yeah, they did. There didn't seem to be any agitation, although I did see video footage of somebody filming us driving up, which was not pleasant to hear. But otherwise, there was no agitation, restlessness. Probably they were waiting for some news. I'd say that was the mood that they seemed to be in.
Well, you can understand that, can't you, Miss Walcott? Given that they had what you know now, that they had a community member who had been shot, and nobody knew what had happened to him inside the police station.
That seemed to be that sort of fits with the way that they were standing and waiting outside the police station.
And then a police officer came up to you who thought you thought looked Indigenous, and he pointed to the disabled parking space, told you to pull in there.
Yes, he did.
You said you were actually told to go to the back of the police station.
Yes.
And then he pointed to the side street and said, go up that street. You found a gate. And what you tell Her Honour in this interview is that you seemed to be there for 7 or 8 minutes before anybody came to open the gate.
Yeah, that sounds pretty. It seemed to be longer than you would think you would have to wait if there was someone needing medical attention inside. It didn't seem right because we were waiting quite a while. That was quite a while, 7 or 8 minutes in the situation. Yeah.
Did you have a phone number that you could call to find out how to get in or what was happening?
I don't think we thought about that because we'd had no phone service since we'd left, or any communication since we'd left Yuendamu. I suppose that would have been what we would have had to do next. Would be find. I don't even know if we had phone service, but no.
You were not familiar with the Yuendamu police station?
No, not the station, or probably didn't really know the number. Like, you get to know when you're in a community, you'll put the police station number in your phone, just in case.
What happened? Eventually, you were led into the gate, correct?
We were. The gate seemed to slide open. It was a very big, like a colorbond type gate. Drove to the back of the clinic. Stopped the ambulance, ran to open up the back doors to get the medical equipment. Heather had exited the vehicle and was over talking to Julia outside the back door. I called out to her. Heather could give us a hand because the equipment's quite awkward to get in and out of the ambulance, and it's heavy. She walked towards me, and then her and Julie confirmed that he had passed away.
Did Julie confirm to you when or what time Kumanjayi had passed away?
I believe it was about 8:20 p.m.
Well, after Sergeant Frost told you that Kumanjayi had passed away, did it make more sense to you why there wasn't so much urgency in getting you inside the police station?
Yes, it did.
After that, after Sergeant Frost told you that, you went inside the police station, is that right?
We did.
Did you see Kumanjayi's body there?
Yes, we did.
All right. And I'm not going to ask you to describe it in any way, but did you have a role in confirming that in fact Kumanjayi had passed away and you couldn't offer him any assistance?
We'd been informed that he was deceased. I know there was a lot of equipment around the deceased body, including the defibrillator. He was in the first holding cell, so we were able to describe it quite well. And it was lifeless. He was lifeless. There was no rise and fall of the chest to indicate he was breathing. We were close enough to see that his eyes were, and I apologise here for the families, his eyes were staring and his pupils were fixed and dilated.
So you were able to satisfy yourself that he had passed away and there was nothing further you could do to assist him?
No, at that stage, not really. I think all we were able to do was just confirm life extinct, which is a process it's a formal process where it has to be documented.
Ms. Walcott, were you then asked to do anything else while you were there to assist anybody?
I was requested by Julie to attend to a policeman who said, "Can you see him?" Not knowing who he was, I asked if she had any first aid equipment. They'd used it all up. There was no supplies left. We retrieved some supplies from the emergency bag. Heather got the stethoscope out as part of the confirming life extinct process. She was with the deceased, I believe, because she wasn't with me and I was with the policeman.
Was that police officer who you ultimately checked a wound for Constable Rolfe?
Yes, it was.
And do you have any conversation with Constable Rolfe as to how he'd got that wound?
It was something along the lines of what happened here? Was it a knife? Because it was puncture wounds on his shoulder. And he said, no, it was scissors. And there wasn't much conversation, but I remember seeing like the puncture marks through the green t-shirt that he was wearing. And I think he had to pull that up so that I could assess the wound, try and draw the edges of the wound together where it was open, using the dressing materials that I had. And I also inquired whether he was covered for tetanus, which we normally do as part of the process when someone has wounds.
All right, and he said he'd sort that out in Alice Springs?
Yes, he did.
It was a single puncture mark, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, a single puncture mark, but there was more holes in the t-shirt, so there was only one that needed to be treated or dressed.
On his skin, there was a single puncture mark. Do you agree with that?
I agree. Yeah,
And it didn't need
I'm
stitches.
confused about the holes. Sorry, because there might have been a smaller one that didn't need dressing.
Rather than speculate, I'll just start because we
Yeah.
have photographs of that wound.
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking because there was holes in the t-shirt and there was a less serious one beside it. So, yes, we'll go with one puncture mark.
All right. Well, I'll leave it for Her Honour to assess that, and obviously Constable Rolfe will come and give evidence himself about that.
Yes. Okay.
There was no wound that required any suturing or stitches.
No. If I'd had steri strips available, I probably would have placed those on, like paper strips to bring the wound edges together.
What was the demeanour of Constable Rolfe when you were speaking with him?
He was quiet, possibly looking a little bit shocked. There wasn't a lot more conversation.
Did you speak with any of the other police officers when you were there, other than Sergeant Frost and Constable Rolfe?
I don't believe so, because they seem to be quite busy with their own thing. Like I remember some talk about the gun locker or something, and seeing a gun on a desk, and he was questioning Julie about his Glock, what he should do with his Glock. That's all I remember.
Constable
Rolfe.
All right. I'm going to ask you now about your trip to the airstrip. There is evidence from you and others that police left the compound sometime after Kumanjayi had passed away to go and collect other police who'd flown in to the airstrip. You left in convoy with the ambulance, is that right? And police.
That's correct. That's correct.
How did that come about?
We were sort of, I don't know, we weren't doing much, sitting at a table. Heather and I, and Julie commented about asking us if we could do something about going to the airstrip in a convoy with a police vehicle in front and one behind. And she twice said, your safety is paramount to us.
Did she ask you
But
what?
that we would be protected with these police vehicles.
Did she tell you why she wanted the ambulance to attend?
No, all I remember is hearing go in a convoy, possibly heard the word as a decoy. I don't know if that means that.
I'm just going to ask you, sorry, Miss Walker, just before you go on, just don't speculate. If you could just try and test your memory, and if you can't remember, just tell us. To the best of your memory, what did Sergeant Frost say to you when she asked if you would go?
Just that, to go in a convoy to the airstrip with a police vehicle in front and behind. And we didn't know why. We speculated ourselves that it was possibly to retrieve some medical personnel.
And so did you then go initially to the airstrip where you were in the middle and you were flanked by two police cars, one in front, one behind?
That's correct. When
you went out for that drive, were there other members of the community around?
I don't remember seeing them because we were in between the two police vehicles. There were still people outside the police station as we turned left from the side street to go to the airstrip.
How many people do you think?
I don't really think I took much notice. It just seemed to be the same group of people that had been there earlier.
I take it from what you've just said that there was nothing about the behaviour of the crowd at that time that concerned you?
No, definitely not. Oh, there'd been some rocks thrown over the police station and on the roof. That was probably all.
Was that while you were inside before going to the airstrip?
Yeah, I had been advised when I went back out to the ambulance once to proceed with care undercover as there had been some missiles coming over the top of the police station.
Did you hear any rocks hitting the roof or other missiles?
I did.
How frequently did that happen while you were in the station before you went to the airstrip?
Not that frequently then, probably more so after we returned.
So you drove to the airstrip. Once you got there, was there any conversation about what you would do?
No, because we were just meant to be in convoy with them. We parked away from the police vehicles, a little bit away. One policeman was out of his vehicle shining a torch around towards the community around the airstrip. And we saw some policemen getting out of the wing with an RFDS plane and jumping into the waiting police vehicles.
Did you get out of the ambulance at any stage on the airstrip?
No, we didn't.
How long do you think you were there parked on the airstrip?
Possibly 5 to probably 10 minutes.
Did anybody give you any advice about who was coming in at that stage?
No, we didn't know anything.
Did you see any medical personnel coming in?
No, it was dark and they seemed to be mostly like dark clothes, police in dark clothing.
Did you assume at the time that you were waiting there on the airstrip that somebody coming in would be a medical officer or a doctor?
We did, yeah, we did.
But at the time, did you have any sort of contact at all by phone or radio with police while you were in the ambulance?
No.
How did you come to leave the airstrip then?
We saw them starting to drive off and we went, oh, we better follow, they're leaving without us. But this time we weren't in between the two vehicles. So we were playing a bit of catch up then as they left the airstrip.
How long was the drive from the airstrip back to the police station?
It could have been 5 to 7 minutes.
Did you see any community members out at the airstrip?
Not at the airstrip. We saw the community members as we exited the airstrip and were on the road back towards the police station.
About how many community members do you think?
Well, we were trying to keep up with the police vehicle. We could see their lights. And then there was a crowd of people across the street walking towards us after the second police vehicle.
And how close to the police station were you at that stage?
We had only just left the airstrip. We were on the road and I just seem to remember a bit of a speed hump and thinking I can't keep up with the police. And I wanted to keep up with it because we were meant to be in between their cars.
Did you eventually catch up with the police?
No, not really. When I saw them again, it was after the incident with the rocking being surrounded by the people that were on the street, and Heather advised me to try and keep up with the police, and I had said to her, "No, I think we'll go back to Yulamu." And she said, "You can't keep up with the police." And then we eventually saw the lights of the second vehicle.
When you saw the lights of the second vehicle, how far away were you from them?
We could have been a couple of 100 metres, but we were almost back at the police station by the time I sighted their lights.
So in your interview, Ms. Walcott, you explain that a number of projector rocks were thrown at the ambulance and unfortunately a window smashed and you were injured as a result. What injuries did you sustain?
I guess it was a head injury because the rock smashed through the driver's side window. The smashed shattered glass hit me on the head and the shoulder. At that time, I didn't realise what it was. It just seemed like some sort of explosion. And then I felt blood dripping down and was trying to veer off the road to avoid running over someone because I was in shock, injured, and didn't know what was happening.
And at that time, how far away do you think the police vehicle was in front of you?
I can't say for sure because we could only see the crowd of people. I don't remember seeing their lights at that stage, just the people that we were trying to, after it happened with the rock being thrown. They were being thrown constantly. I was just concentrating on not running somebody over.
Did you stop the car after that,
No.
after you were injured?
No.
And then how many more minutes do you think it was before you got into the police area?
I'd say probably 4 to 5 minutes.
Did you have to come through that back gate again?
Yes, we went through. The gate was open by the time we got there. They were going in and we went in behind them. Yeah.
When you went in, did somebody assist you with your injuries?
Heather assisted me by coming round to the driver's side door of the ambulance. I was trying to wind the window up in my shock state, which wasn't there. And she called out to the police that were entering the police station that we've got an injury here. She assisted me in and we found some more first aid supplies and my head. I had lots of big lumps on my head, so I sat quite a while with ice for those. And with Heather basically nursing me.
And Miss Walcott, did you receive ultimately any sutures in your face?
No.
That evening you stayed at the police station, is that right?
We did.
And when did you ultimately leave the community of Yuendamu?
I was advised by whoever took over in charge that they would get us out in the morning, but we didn't actually leave Yuendamu till about 4:30 in the afternoon.
And in the meantime, you did that interview with police, correct?
I did.
Did you get much sleep overnight?
No, we'd been awake all day Saturday and Saturday night. There wasn't really anywhere to rest, and then all day Sunday waiting to hear when we could leave the community. I probably dozed off with probably for half an hour, but Heather was awake the whole time.
Miss Walcott, have you been back to Yuendamu since this happened?
No, I haven't.
Have you participated in any sort of lessons learnt meeting with NT Health or police?
On the Monday following, we went to Alice Springs on Sunday afternoon, and on Monday there was a debriefing in the CAR's office.
Were police there?
No, it was a meeting with administrative, executive staff and Royal Flying Doctors personnel, and I think there was some administrator or supervisor from the Royal Flying Doctors also on video link.
Have you spoken with NT Health at all as to how there could be improved communications in the event of a planned withdrawal of services?
No, I haven't spoken to them, but I believe that would have probably hopefully come out of the debriefing that we had.
Miss Walcott, have you spoken to Sergeant Frost at all since the evening of the 9th of November or the day of the 10th?
Julie did ring me not long after the incident, or a few weeks, it could have even been early the next year, just to say to say sorry, and that she felt she was thinking about me a lot and felt terrible about what had happened.
Was it meaningful for you to get that phone call from her?
Very meaningful, yes, yeah.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Walker.
believe it was heartfelt because Julie had also, in our short conversations, she'd been a nurse as well for, I believe, 15 years. So she had a nursing background. So we're sort of like kindred spirits in a way.
And Ms. Walker, can you tell her, Honor, has there been ongoing impact for you from the events of that night?
Yeah, I get triggered a lot. I have been contacted since last June regarding being subpoenaed for the murder trial. I've had 2 subpoenas for that and the summonses, which are quite upsetting when they happen. I had a day off last June waiting to be called for the trial, which didn't eventuate because there was a delay with the language interpretation process. And then in March this year, I was to be prepared to be called again, but it was called off. So every time I've had these calls, I find that quite triggering and upsetting, causes anxiety, and reading the statement as well, because I gave that statement when I was still, I believe, in a shock state. Heather commented that she thought I could have had concussion. It was easier to remember the event, I guess, giving the statement so soon after the event, but I don't think I was physically or mentally in a fit state to be giving it.
Have you been offered any counselling by NT Health as a result of what you went through?
Yes, on the day of the debriefing, I was able to access some counselling in Alice Springs. I've had counselling through ESA. We have access to the bush nursing line. I didn't need to use it. I did have some counselling with, it was organised probably through the insurance company, through Workers' Comp. And I have had different counselling sessions, and there's some more being organised by, I had a referral from the GP at Pine Creek Clinic when I was up there a few weeks ago, so I'll be having some more soon.
I don't need to go into details, but you had another very traumatic incident, I think, in the top end while you were nursing. Is that right?
Yeah, a year after Yuendamu at Palumpa, I was a victim of a home invasion. And there was a lot of things wrong with that scenario as well. Very traumatic, as in it made me realise that I wasn't completely healed from the Yuendamu incident, and I actually had thought I couldn't go into fight or flight like I felt I had on the night when we were being rocked. I just gave in this particular night in Palumpa and thought, if he gets in, I'm dead, and I would have been.
Have you been able to offer NT Health any feedback about security for nurses in accommodation?
I guess that subject comes up not specifically for NT Health, but it does come up in a lot of communities, especially larger communities, where sometimes they manage to get alcohol. So there can be some tricky situations. It's been discussed, but I haven't approached NT Health as far as that now.
Finally, Ms. Walcott, you've continued to work in the Northern Territory, and you're coming back next year and this year. Do you still
next week? I'm back.
And next year,
I'm just having a few weeks off between Pine Creek contracts clinic.
I think you're entitled to a few weeks off, Ms. Walcott, but you're coming back next year for 6 months.
That's right. Yeah.
You still enjoy nursing in remote areas?
I do. I love it. I just love the feeling that you get selfishly sometimes, because you're looking at the patients, the spectrums, like newborns to the elderly, and being able to, you might be seeing them for one little thing in the clinic, and then you'll be able to assess there's other things wrong. You encourage them to come back. If they come back, it's wonderful. We perform lots of different skills in the remote nursing job, from vaccinating adult and child health checks, vaccinating. I already said that. It's quite a varied, unpredictable job. I think that's why I like it as well. It gives you a lot of job satisfaction. Just not going back to the the wild cities anymore. I don't think. Whatever.
Well, it's important for NT Health to be able to recruit the best nurses to come and work in remote communities. Do you agree with that?
I do agree, and I think probably if these issues aren't looked at, they do have recruitment issues. Because people don't want to go back to somewhere where they don't feel safe.
If those safety concerns can be addressed, your evidence is, isn't it, that it can be a very rewarding and worthwhile experience to practice as a nurse in remote areas?
Very much so. Very much. I love it. I do love my job. That's why people are saying, when are you retiring? Must be looking old.
Is that a convenient time for a break, Your Honour?
It is. Ms Walcott, we'll take a 15-minute break. There might be some more questions. And thank you so much for making yourself available during this couple of weeks when you were supposed to be having some rest time. But you've made yourself available and you're addressing those difficult times again, so we appreciate that. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.
Thank you.
All stand. The Coronial Court now stands temporarily adjourned.